When the boy I raised for 36 years stood before our village and called me just the lady who filled in, it felt like a knife twisting in my heart. I'm Gloria Reed, and I poured my life into a farmstead that holds every sacrifice I made for Jared. What he didn't know was that I'd already uncovered his plan to steal it all. This is the story of how I turned betrayal into strength, fighting to protect my legacy. Will I let his greed take everything I love? You won't believe what I did next. I paused, looking straight at you, my eyes steady as the subscribe and like buttons flashed on the screen. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. If Jared's betrayal shocked you, hit that like button to stand with me, and make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Was there ever a moment when the person you loved most turned their back on you? I never thought I'd feel that knife in my heart, not from Jared, the boy I raised as my own. I'm Gloria Reed, 74 years old, and my life has been poured into a small farmstead, 2 hectares of golden fields that hold every sacrifice I've made. But that day, under the weight of his words, everything I believed in shattered. It was a crisp autumn evening, the kind where the air smells of damp earth and fading leaves. The community had gathered in my old barn, its wooden beams creaking under the weight of time. We were discussing the farm, my farm, the one I'd toiled over for decades. Jared stood there, his eyes cold, his voice sharp as he spoke to the crowd. "She's not really my mom," he said, his words slicing through the murmurs. "She's just someone who filled in when no one else wanted me." The room fell silent. My hands trembled around the glass of water I held, the icy surface biting my fingertips. I could feel the eyes of the village on me, their whispers like a low hum in the distance. I wanted to scream, to demand why he'd say such a thing after all I'd given him. But I stood frozen, the memory of signing his adoption papers flashing before me. 36 years ago, in a dimly lit orphanage, I held a trembling boy in my arms, promising to be his home. His tiny hands clung to me, his warmth filling the hollows of my heart. That moment was my vow, a vow he now spat on. His words weren't just an insult, they were a betrayal. I'd raised him, loved him, sacrificed everything for him. The farm, my life's work, was at the heart of it all, and now I could see it in his eyes. Greed. He wanted the land, my land, to sell it off like it meant nothing. My chest tightened, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and betrayal. Why would he do this? What had I missed? I replayed his words in my mind, each syllable a fresh wound. Just someone who filled in. Was that all I was to him? I'd spent sleepless nights sewing clothes to afford his school books, my fingers raw from the needle. I'd sold my mother's jewelry to pay for his college, the clink of gold against the pawnshop counter still echoing in my ears. And now he stood there, dismissing me like a stranger. I looked out at the fields beyond the barn, the golden wheat swaying under the fading sun. This land wasn't just dirt, it was my heart, my promise to Jared, my legacy. I couldn't let him take it, not like this. My hands steadied, the trembling giving way to resolve. I'd raised him, but I wasn't weak. I'd find out what he was planning, because something told me this wasn't just about words. How do you keep loving someone when their heart seems to drift further away? I stood in my kitchen, the faint scent of coffee lingering in the air, staring at an old photo of Jared as a boy. His smile used to light up my world, but now, after his words at the barn, I wondered if I'd ever truly known him. My fingers traced the faded edges of the picture, and I couldn't help but ask myself, why had I given everything to a boy who could call me a stranger? The farmstead stretched out beyond my window, its golden fields swaying under a gentle breeze. The smell of fresh hay filled my lungs, a reminder of the life I'd built for us. 36 years ago, I was a social worker, my days spent in sterile offices, but my heart was always with the children who had no one. I'd seen Jared in that orphanage, a scrawny 5-year-old with wary eyes curled up in a corner. The room was cold, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones, and the faint hum of a flickering fluorescent light buzzed overhead. When I knelt beside him, his small hand reached for mine, trembling but warm. I signed the adoption papers that day, my pen scratching against the paper, sealing a promise I'd never break. I gave up everything for him. Nights blurred into mornings as I worked double shifts, the whir of my sewing machine filling the quiet hours. My hands ached, the skin raw from endless stitching, just to afford his school supplies. I remember the weight of my mother's gold necklace in my palm, the last piece of her I had, before I handed it over at the pawn shop. The clerk's cold fingers brushed mine, and the clink of coins felt like a betrayal of my own past. But it was for Jared's college, for his future. Every sacrifice was a brick in the life I built for him. As he grew, though, something shifted. Jared stopped coming home as often. I'd call, my voice echoing through the phone, only to hear him say, "I'm busy, Gloria, maybe next month." His words were clipped, distant, like the wind that rustled through the fields outside. I'd sit at this same kitchen table, the wood worn smooth by years of meals we shared, and wonder if I'd done enough. Had I loved him too much, or not enough? The ticking of the old clock on the wall seemed to mock me, each second stretching into doubt. The farm was more than land. It was our story. I'd wake at dawn, the grass damp under my feet, to tend the crops that paid for his dreams. The smell of earth clung to my hands, grounding me through every hardship. But Jared's visits grew rare, his laughter replaced by curt nods. Once, when I begged him to come for Thanksgiving, he sighed, his voice sharp through the phone. "I've got my own life now. You don't get it." I stood there, gripping the receiver, the silence heavier than the harvest sacks I used to carry. Now, after his betrayal at the barn, I saw it clearly. He'd grown into a man I didn't recognize, one who saw my sacrifices as a debt he didn't owe. My heart ached, but a flicker of suspicion stirred. Why was he so fixated on the farm now? What was he planning behind my back? The fields outside seemed to whisper secrets, and I knew I had to find out before it was too late. What do you do when the child you raise tries to steal the very ground you stand on? I stood in my living room, the air thick with the musty scent of old books and betrayal, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Jared's words from the barn, "You're just someone who filled in," echoed in my mind, but now I sensed something darker. He wasn't just ungrateful, he was plotting against me. It started with a call from Emma, my lawyer and friend, her voice tight with urgency. "Gloria, I found something at the land registry. Jared's filed papers, a power of attorney to sell your farm." My knees buckled, and I gripped the edge of the couch, its worn fabric rough under my fingers. Sell my farm? The land I'd poured my life into? I closed my eyes, and I was back in that orphanage, signing Jared's adoption papers, the ink smudging under my trembling hand as I promised him a future. That promise was my anchor, and now he wanted to rip it away. I confronted him that evening at the farm. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and the room felt colder than it should have. Jared stood by the fireplace, his face half lit by the flickering flames, his eyes dodging mine. "I was just trying to help us both," he said, his voice smooth, too smooth. "You're getting old, Gloria. You can't manage this place forever." I wanted to believe him, but his words felt like oil, slick and deceptive. "Help us?" I snapped, my voice shaking. "By forging papers behind my back?" He flinched, but his jaw tightened and he muttered, "You don't understand. You're not even my real mom." Those words hit like a storm. My heart raced, the pulse thumping in my ears, drowning out the crackle of the fire. Not his real mom? I'd bandaged his scraped knees, stayed up nights worrying when he was sick, sold my mother's heirlooms for his dreams. I thought of his childhood, how he'd cling to me during thunderstorms, his small voice whispering, "You'll always be here, right?" Now he stood there, claiming blood was thicker than love. "You think I don't deserve this land because I'm not blood?" I asked, my voice low, trembling with rage. He didn't answer, but his silence was louder than any confession. I couldn't let this go. The farm wasn't just land. It was my heart, my legacy. I met Emma the next day at her office, the air heavy with the smell of old paper and ink. Her desk was cluttered with documents, each one a piece of Jared's betrayal. "He's been planning this for months," she said, her voice steady but grim. "But we can fight this." My mind raced, torn between hurt and fury. How could he do this? What else was he hiding? I sat alone that night, the wind screaming through the fields, my hands clenched around a cup of cold tea. "He thinks I'm nothing," I whispered to myself, the words bitter on my tongue. "But I'll show him what a mother's love can do." I knew then I had to act, to uncover every secret he thought he could hide. Emma and I would fight, but first I needed proof, something undeniable. What was Jared's next move? How far would he go to take everything from me? You won't believe what I found out next. Chapter 13. How do you fight someone you once held so close, when every memory of them is tangled with love? I sat in Emma's office, the faint scent of coffee and old paper filling the air, my hands steady for the first time in days. Jared's betrayal had cut deep, but I wasn't the frail old woman he thought I was. I'd raised him, fought for him, and now I'd fight to protect what was mine. The question was, could I outsmart him before he sold my farm out from under me? Emma's voice was calm but firm as she spread documents across her desk, the rustle of paper sharp in the quiet room. "Jared's power of attorney is fraudulent," she said, pointing to a forged signature that mimicked mine. "We can challenge it with the Land Commission." My eyes traced the loops of my name, a betrayal in ink. I remembered my mother's words, whispered years ago as we sat on the porch, the evening air thick with jasmine. "Gloria, family is what you fight for no matter what." Her voice steadied me now, a lifeline pulling me from despair to determination. We needed more than paperwork. I needed proof of Jared's intent, something undeniable. Emma suggested a bold move. Record him admitting his motives. My heart raced at the thought, the weight of it pressing against my chest like the heavy air before a storm. Could I trick the boy I'd raised into revealing his true colors? I nodded, my resolve hardening. "Let's do it," I said, my voice low but unwavering. Emma's eyes met mine, a spark of admiration in them. "You're stronger than he thinks," she said. Those words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. I went to the village the next day, the cobblestone streets alive with the chatter of neighbors. The smell of fresh bread drifted from the bakery, and I felt the warmth of their support. Old Mrs. Carter grabbed my hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "We know what you've done for Jared," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "This farm is yours, Gloria." Their words wrapped around me like a blanket, reminding me I wasn't alone. The fields beyond the village stretched golden under the midday sun, a symbol of everything I'd built. I wouldn't let Jared take it. Back home, I planned the trap. I'd invite Jared to the farm, pretend to discuss a compromise. My hands shook as I dialed his number, the phone's cold plastic pressing against my ear. "Come over tomorrow," I said, keeping my voice even. "We need to talk about the land." He agreed, his tone smug, unaware of the recorder I'd slip into my pocket. Alone that night, I stood on the porch, the breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers. "I'll show him," I whispered to myself, my heart a mix of hope and fear. "This isn't about blood, it's about love." The plan was set, but doubt crept in like shadows lengthening across the fields. Could I really do this to Jared? Would my evidence be enough to stop him? The wind whispered through the wheat, and I felt the weight of every sacrifice I'd made. I was ready, but what would happen when I faced him? Could I really face Jared and expose his lies in front of everyone? The morning of the Land Commission hearing, my stomach churned as I stood in my bedroom, the faint scent of lavender from an old sachet clinging to the air. My hands smoothed the creases of my best dress, the fabric soft but heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. I'd spent a lifetime building a home for Jared, and now I was fighting to keep it. The question gnawed at me. Would my evidence be enough to stop him? Emma and I had prepared meticulously, poring over documents in her office late into the night, the glow of her desk lamp casting shadows on the walls. I remembered signing Jared's adoption papers, the scratch of the pen, a vow etched into my soul. That memory steeled me as I slipped the recorder into my pocket, its cold metal grounding my resolve. Jared thought he could erase me, but I was ready to fight. The hearing room was stark, its fluorescent lights buzzing faintly. the air thick with the smell of polished wood and tension. I sat across from Jared, his face composed, almost smug as he adjusted his tie. The commission members shuffled papers, their faces unreadable. Emma leaned close, her voice a whisper. "We've got this, Gloria. Just stay calm." I nodded, my heart pounding, the echo of Jared's words. "She doesn't deserve it. She's not even blood," burning in my mind. When my turn came, I stood, my legs trembling but my voice steady. "I have something you need to hear," I said, pulling out the recorder. The room fell silent as I pressed play. Jared's voice filled the space, cold and unmistakable. "She doesn't deserve it. She's not even blood." Gasps rippled through the room. Jared's face drained of color, his hands gripping the table. That's taken out of context," he stammered, his voice cracking. But the commission's eyes were on me, and I saw the shift. "I raised him," I said, my voice rising. "I loved him. This farm is mine, built with my sweat and heart." The head commissioner, a stern woman with gray hair, leaned forward. "The evidence is clear," she said. "The power of attorney is fraudulent. The land remains with Ms. Reed." A wave of relief crashed over me, the room suddenly bright, the sunlight streaming through the windows like a promise kept. The crowd murmured, some clapping, their voices a warm hum that drowned out the buzz of the lights. I turned to Emma, her smile a quiet victory, and I felt lighter than I had in months. Jared stood, his shoulders slumped, his footsteps heavy as he walked out. The sound of his shoes on the hardwood faded, each step a reminder of the boy who'd once run to me for comfort. My heart ached, but not for him, not anymore. "I protected my home," I whispered to myself, the words a quiet triumph. I'd fought for my legacy, for the love I'd poured into this land. The victory was mine, but what would I do with it now? If you're cheering for Gloria's victory, smash that like button. What do you think about this moment of justice? Let us know in the comments. After all the pain, what does it mean to truly be a mother? I stood on the porch of my farmstead, the early morning sun casting a warm glow over the fields, the air rich with the scent of fresh grass and wildflowers. The victory at the hearing had saved my land, but it left a hollow ache in my chest. Jared's words, "She's not even blood," still lingered, sharp as ever. I'd won the fight, but I needed to find peace within myself. What had this journey taught me? I sat with Emma at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd shared countless meals with Jared. The wood was worn smooth, carrying the weight of years. A cup of tea steamed between us, its earthy aroma grounding me. "You gave me the strength to fight," I told her, my voice soft but steady. She smiled, her eyes kind. "You had it all along, Gloria," she said. Her words sank deep, stirring memories of the pain I'd carried. I thought of Jared's betrayal, his cold voice in the barn, the way it had pierced me like a winter wind. But now I saw it differently, not as a wound, but as a mirror, showing me my own resilience. Walking through the fields later, the sun warmed my face, and the soft rustle of wheat felt like a whisper of hope. I'd spent decades defining myself through Jared, through my sacrifices for him, but standing there, the earth solid beneath my feet, I realized something profound. My love wasn't tied to blood or gratitude. It was bigger than that, bigger than him. It was the love I gave freely, the kind that built this farm, this life. My heart swelled, not with pain, but with purpose. That evening, I stood in the center of the farm, envisioning a new future. The fields could be more than my legacy. They could be a haven. I saw children running through the grass, their laughter echoing like music. "I'll give others what I gave Jared," I whispered to myself, the words a vow, a chance to belong. The idea took root. I'd turn the farm into a community garden, a place for orphaned children to find safety, to grow. The thought filled me with a quiet joy, like the warmth of the sun after a long night. I looked out at the horizon, the sky painted in hues of gold and pink. The pain of Jared's betrayal hadn't broken me. It had shown me my strength. I wasn't just the woman who raised him. I was Gloria Reed, a mother by choice, by love. But what would this new path look like? How would I carry this lesson forward? What lesson did you take away from Gloria's journey? Share it in the comments. If this story inspired you, share it with a friend who needs to hear it. What does it mean to build a life that outlasts pain? I stood in the heart of my farmstead, now a budding community garden, the air alive with the scent of blooming flowers and freshly turned earth. Children's laughter danced on the breeze, their voices bright against the rustle of leaves. The journey with Jared had broken my heart, but it had also shown me the truth. Love isn't measured by blood or gratitude. It's in the choice to keep giving, even when it hurts. What was the greatest lesson this path taught me? I walked through the garden, my shoes sinking into the soft soil, remembering the hearing where I'd fought for this land. The memory of Jared's voice, "She doesn't deserve it," still stung, but it no longer held me captive. I'd faced him, stood tall in that stark room, the echo of applause ringing in my ears. That victory wasn't just about keeping the farm, it was about reclaiming my strength. Emma joined me that afternoon, her presence steady as we watched the children plant seeds under the golden sun. "You've built something beautiful here," she said, her voice warm with pride. I nodded, my throat tight. "It's more than a garden," I told her. "It's a promise, to these kids, to myself, that love doesn't end with betrayal." The words felt like a weight lifting, the final piece of a puzzle falling into place. This land, once a battleground, was now a sanctuary for children who, like Jared once was, needed someone to believe in them. I thought back to the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the sold jewelry, the years of toil. They weren't for nothing. They'd led me here to a purpose greater than I'd imagined. I used to think being a mother meant raising Jared, I said to myself, my voice barely a whisper as I watched a girl with pigtails giggle over a sprouting plant. Now I know it's about giving love no matter what. The realization wrapped around me like the warmth of the sun, steady and sure. The garden thrived, its rows of green a testament to resilience. I saw my future here, surrounded by children who'd find a home in these fields, just as I had. The pain of Jared's betrayal had faded, replaced by a quiet joy. I was Gloria Reed, not just the woman who raised him, but a mother to many, my love rooted deep in this earth.